My question is to the Minister for the Privatisation of Parks. Minister, yesterday's Tasmanian Audit Office report evaluated 22 parks reserve activity assessments and found that of these, only 2 had complete documentation. This would be inexcusable in any other statutory assessment process that had appeal rights. The Audit Office report also found that consultation on the RAAs is developer-driven and the process is not suitable to deal with the quantity and complexity of projects generated by the expressions of interest process. Minister, given the inadequacies with the process, the lack of appeal rights and the ability of RAAs to make objectively false assertions that cannot be challenged, will you concede that the Parks RAA process is not fit for purpose? Despite commitments from your predecessor that the process is under review, we've seen no discussion paper or terms of reference or consultation happen, and no details on what the revised system may look like. Minister, given the current process is confirmed by the Auditor-General as not fit for purpose, will you suspend all assessments and begin public consultation on a new statutory process for assessment of proposals for developments in public protected lands?
Thank you. The Minister for Parks.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I thank the honourable member, the Leader of the Greens, for her question and her interest in this matter. Our beautiful parks, our important natural and cultural heritage that they protect, and the opportunity for Tasmania to be a leader in the world in protecting and presenting those values, those parks, in a sensitive and appropriate way that assists us to look after those values whilst also sharing them with other people and educating them. Madam Speaker, the Auditor-General report referred to in the Leader of the Greens question found that the EOI process was in all material aspects implemented and administered effectively and in a manner consistent with the government's policy objectives. Other key findings, Madam Speaker, there was no evidence to support allegations of undue secrecy of the process. The publication of information was timely and appropriately handled. The process and guiding principles are fundamentally sound and well supported by reference to authoritative guidance on ecotourism. Madam Speaker, staff were knowledgeable and diligent in relation to relevant issues. Ministerial authority was respected and appropriate communication channels used. The EOI process has been successful in contributing to the objectives of economic growth that were the purposes of its instigation by the government. Madam Speaker, the Auditor-General's report, to the Greens' tragic disappointment, says this process is doing the job that it was meant to do. Its process is sound and fair as an additional layer of assessment and checking and approval of projects before they even get to the gate of being assessed as activities in our parks and reserves systems. Madam Speaker.
Could you ask the Minister, Standing Order 45, to address his mind to the question? We confined the question to the reserve activity assessment process, which the Auditor-General found is not fit for purpose.
Thank you. As you know, that's not a point of order, but I do ask the Minister to try and address the question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a fairly ironic question, really, from the Leader of the Greens, because, Madam Speaker, we know that the Greens hate process. They will take a protest over a process any day of the week. Madam Speaker, the EOI process that the Auditor-General has reviewed and given a clean bill of health, a roadworthy certificate, Madam Speaker, adds a layer over and above the reserve activity assessment that's the same reserve activity assessment that operated under Labor and the Greens when they were approving tourism ventures in our parks and reserves, including in the Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area, without any front-end assessment of any kind. Just a random process where people came up with unsolicited bids and talked to whoever in the government about them to say, can I come and build this?
Would the Minister please address his mind to the question question of reserve activity assessments and the fact that the Auditor-General found that only 2 of 22 that they were presented with had complete documentation.
Thank you very much. Not a point of order, but Minister, could you address the question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I say, the reserve activity assessments that Ms O'Connor refers to is the same reserve activity assessment process that existed.
An island for $80 a week.
Madam Speaker,
well,
it's the same reserve activity assessment as applied when Labor and the Greens were in power. When leases and licences were granted to tourism operators to work in our Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area and other national parks and reserves, and businesses which have continued to set the high bar for Tasmania's reputation as a place that could do this well, Madam Speaker. And what we've done is added an additional front end to that. And you'll see if you read the report,
I have read the report front to
the
back.
very large number of projects that entered that process that didn't proceed for a range of reasons, because we've got a front end which has been able to triage them out and say there's certain things we don't want to have in our parks and reserves, Madam Speaker. These other ones are attractive. We believe they can do the job, and they should be allowed to go through to be assessed now as activities in our reserves. Previously there was not that gate ahead of them. Madam Speaker, we know that the Greens hate due process and evidence and independent review. They hated it in the major projects debate.
Can the Minister confirm he's answering on the basis of Luke Martin's media release? That's there in front of him, and you've been reading.
I don't think that's a point of order.
It's a point of shame.
Point of shame.
Please resume, but I do warn you, your 5 minutes has passed.
Yeah.
As I was saying, Madam Speaker, the Greens hate due process, they hate evidence, they hate independent reviews, they hated it in the major projects debate, they hate it in the EOI process and the RAA too. This sounds like Dr. Zeus. This is because the Auditor-General, these processes call out the Greens' hypocrisy and crazy, venomous conspiracies and focuses back on the facts. And the Greens can't handle the facts, Madam Speaker, and including the fact that we can have our unique natural values and visit them too. And Tasmanians can do this better than anybody else in the world, Madam Speaker. And I call on the Greens to abandon their baseless, slanderous, venomous campaign against the EOI process, cease their personal attacks on individual proponents and public officials involved in the process, and back this government's belief that Tasmania can be a leader in sensitive, sustainable, world-class nature-based tourism like they used to.
Thank you, Mr.